Okay, can everyone see my iPad screen? Can you see that first page of the review? Thumbs up?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. Okay, so whether or not you want to have this written down and have as it a quick reference for the test, that's up to you. However you want to write down these formulas. Now, you might also want to draw yourself some pictures. So, for example, for the prisms, remember it could be a rectangular prism. It could also be a triangular prism. So realize, or it could be a pentagonal prism. And then where we might have to use that formula 1/2 ANS to get the capital B. So for your notes that you're going to use for the test, you can either just have it as basic as this slide, or you could also have pictures and write down the formulas right next to each one. Remember, whenever it's a triangular prism, remember this capital B is a triangle. So it would be base times height divided by 2, or 1/2 BH. So whatever your base shape, that's what the capital B represents when you're doing any of these formulas. The P represents perimeter. For the volume, for the pyramids, remember the L is the slant height. So again, draw yourself pictures, label things, just so you have a quick reference. Keep in mind that there were, so many surface area lessons that we covered, so many volumes. So you don't want to have to keep opening up maybe 4 or 5 different PDFs or Notability files to get these formulas. So either have them all on the same page in Notability, or have a hard copy on a piece of paper so you have a quick reference tool. So before we go through the review, let me just tell you about the test. So the test itself has 10 questions that you're actually going to answer. And they're all calculations. So they're all going to be using the formulas that are listed above. You're either going to be calculating a total area or a volume. Now remember, total area is also surface area. So just remember that these two words, surface area or total area, mean the same thing. Volume is just all these different volume formulas. So make sure that that's all we're doing on these 10 questions, is we're working with either the surface area formula, surface or total, or you're working with the volume formulas. Okay, now you may have to find missing pieces, but for the most part, I think you're just either asked to calculate either surface area or total area or volume. 10 questions. The 11th question is, again, your work. Now, this time, your work is only worth 10 points. The 10 questions here are 9 points each. So 10 questions, 9 points each, and then the submission of the work is 10 points. Now, you need to show work for every question. So you need to actually write down what you're keying in your calculator. So that way you can get the full credit. Any questions in general about the test? So what's nice, or what's luckily for you guys, is if we were back in school, you wouldn't have a formula reference sheet. You would be memorizing all of these formulas. So you guys sort of lucked out because you get to use a formula reference sheet and your calculator. So let's go ahead and go through the answers of the review. The review reflects the test. So let's take a look at it. Of a pyramid and show how to work it out and plug it in. Or an example of a cone. Whatever you're going to use, just have it readily available. All right, let's go ahead. Formula sheet. Again, if you want to do an exam, look at the first problem. So here it's asking you to find total area of a rectangular prism, and the dimensions they're giving us are 8, 6, and 5. Now, total area, again, remember, is also surface area. These two mean the same thing. Now, not all of the questions on Wednesday are multiple choice. Some of them, just like before, you're going to write in your answers. Now, on the test, it's going to say, only put the numeric part. Don't worry about units. So, for example, if number 1 were a free response question where you don't have multiple choice questions to choose from, in the box, all you would have to put is 236. You don't need to worry about writing feet or feet squared, or like square feet or feet squared. Everybody with me on that? So some of the questions are not multiple choice. Question?
Yeah. How did you know if 6 was the width or 5? How did you know where to put the numbers?
Okay, so whenever it's a rectangular prism, it doesn't matter. Your final answer should have been the same. What would have been different if you put the 6 and the 8 and the 5 in a different spot, then your perimeter and your base area would have been different. But because the question only asked for total area, as long as you ended up with 236, that was fine.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, so if you would have put, say, the 6 here and the 5 here, you're still going to get the same answer. So for the rectangular prisms, you can choose what your base area is, or what your base shape, which rectangle is the base. In this particular problem, we chose the base to be the 8 times 6, which was here. And then the 5 was the height of our thing, of our prism. But again, you can choose. Just remember, if you just want to remember how you maybe learned the formula back in middle school, the formula, you could also find each of the rectangles separately. That's probably what they did. It was a lot longer. I think it's a lot easier using this formula. 2 times the base areas plus perimeter times height. Everybody good on 1? All right, number 2. This is also a total area question, but it's a pyramid. Now, keep in mind, you're probably going to have to do Pythagorean theorem to find either a height or a slant height when you're working with these pyramids. So be able to turn the height and say the slant height, take half of the side length, and make it into a right triangle. So for this one, we needed to find the slant height because the formula is area of the base plus the lateral areas, which is 1/2 perimeter times slant height. Notice they only gave me the height of the pyramid, not the slant height. So what I did was I made a right triangle here, and then you would do Pythagorean theorem. So we had 10. We took half of the side length, and we were looking for the hypotenuse, which was the slant height. Once you did all of that, you got 2 square root 29, and then left in simplest radical form, that's what you would be filling in your box. Now, if it said to round your answer to the hundreds place, then on your calculator, you would have actually done 64 plus, and then you would have multiplied 32 times the square root of 29, gotten that decimal, and then added it to 64. So just read the directions. Again, if it's left in simplest radical form, it would just be that answer here. The next one, again, total area of the right triangular prism. Again, the name of the prism is the shape of the base. So my base shape is a triangle. So I would do 7 times 24 and then divide by 2 and get 84 and then plug it into the formula. 2 times the base area plus perimeter times height. You needed to do Pythagorean theorem here to figure out this side of the triangle. This is actually a triple. It's the 7, 24, 25. But in order to calculate perimeter, we needed to find this side length. Oops. Now, keep in mind that probably in middle school, they taught you to find the area of this triangle, the area of this triangle, and then the area of the 3 rectangles. That's another way to do it and add them all up. But it's a lot easier just to use the 2 times the base area plus perimeter times height. And again, if it were a fill in the blank, a free response question, again, they're going to tell you to leave off units. So you would just write 1,848, and that would be the answer you would put in the box. So again, not all of the questions this time are multiple choice. Some are free response. Question?
On number 3, so we had to find the hypotenuse to find the base, right? The base area.
You didn't need it because it was a right triangular prism. So you didn't need the hypotenuse to find the base area. You needed the hypotenuse to find the perimeter of the base.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense? Because the perimeter was right here, and you had to add 7 plus 24 plus 25.
Yeah, okay.
Because they gave you, it was a right, so you just had to do 7 times 24 divided by 2.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, next one, surface area. Again, another triangular prism. However, this time it's not a right triangular prism. However, they're giving you the height of that triangle base. So the base times height. So 4 times 6 divide by 2. And that gives you the base area, which is 12. And what was nice is they gave us all of the sides. So to find perimeter, we just added 5 plus 5 plus 6. And now we plug it into our surface area formula. 2 times the base area plus perimeter times the height of the prism, and 200 centimeters squared. And again, if this were a fill in the blank, you would just put 200 in the box. For number 5, this time it's...
Corey,
Yes?
how did you know for number 3 that 30 was the height?
Because whenever you have a prism, the name of the prism tells you the base. So this one was not sitting on its base. The base for number 3 is the triangle, hence the name, triangular prism. So this is why if I were to stand it up and actually put it on that pink triangle, then we could see that the height is the 30. Okay, so sometimes it's not sitting on its base. And this 30 looks like it might be the side of the base, but again, that rectangle is not the base. It's whatever you have 2 of. Everybody good? All right, next one. Surface area of a cone. So right here is our formula. The base area is pi r squared. It's a circle. And then the sides or the lateral area is pi RL, or pi times radius times slant height. So for this one, they gave us the radius, they gave us the height. Again, we needed to turn it into a right triangle here because we needed the L, the slant height. So 6 was the height, 8 was the radius, and now I can find the slant height. Again, if you know your triples, a 6, 8, 10. If not, you do Pythagorean theorem. 6 squared plus 8 squared equals L squared. 36 plus 64. That gives you 100. Square root it, and your slant height is 10. And then you plug it into the formula. 144 pi units squared. It said to leave it in terms of pi. If it said to round to the tenths place, then you would be expected to do 144 times the pi button and then round it. However, you'll see both. Next one is asking you to find the surface area of a cylinder. So what's nice about the cylinder and the cone, it's a straightforward formula. When we have a cylinder, we have two circles. So that's why it's 2 times pi r squared. And then the lateral area is this 2 pi r height. So you just plug in what's given to you. They gave us the radius. They gave us the height. So then just plug it in and then multiply it. It said to leave it in terms of pi, so we multiplied everything except for pi. Notice both of these have a pi in it, so this is why we could add 72 and 48. Pretty good on 6. All right, here's 7. On the first page here, when we were doing these triangular prisms, this is the hardest part because most of the time when it's a triangular prism, they're not going to be having the figure sitting on its base. It's going to be sitting on one of the rectangle sides. So that's going to be the most challenging part as far as the triangular prisms. And then again, for the cones and for the pyramids, you might be given either the height or the slant height. So you're going to have to turn it into a right triangle to find whatever you need for the formula. So just be careful and know your triples. Yes.
Last time you said if I decided not to use a formula sheet, I would be allowed to have my notes open, right?
You can do it either way.
Okay.
So you can either have your notes open or you can have a formula sheet. You're using whatever you want. Everybody good on that? I would have it where it's nice and organized, where you know where everything is. You know, if back here on the now we're switching to volume. So for volume of any prism, it's always area of the base times how tall it is. Now, my shape, that's a base, and again, it's not sitting on its base. The base is the triangle. That's the name of the prism. So you're going to find the area of that triangle, and it's 1/2 base times height, or base times height, divide by 2. You were given the height, and you were given the base. So the base is 8, the height is 10. 8 times 10 is 80, divide by 2, and my base area is 40. And now this is the height of the prism, because again, it wasn't sitting on its base. Pretty good so far? Okay, next, a rectangular prism. Here, again, we could still use this formula, but again, our base shape is a rectangle, or in this case, we could say it's a square. Or, again, the easier way that you learned probably in middle school is just take the 3 numbers, length times width times height. So 7 times 7 times 14, and you get 686 feet cubed. So again, if this were a fill-in question, you wouldn't worry about the feet cubed or the cubic feet. You would just type in 686. Next is a volume of a cylinder. It's still capital B, area of the base times how tall it is, but notice my base shape is a circle. So this is where the pi r squared comes in, and then you multiply it times how tall the cylinder is. So my radius is 10, and my height is going to be the 16. Plug it into the formula, and you get 1,600 pi centimeters cubed. Everybody good? Number 10, volume of a cone. So it's basically the same formula as a cylinder, but just remember we're cutting 1/3 of it off. So if you think about the cylinder, and if you were to put a cone inside, it's the same formula except for this gets cut off. So it's still the pi r squared height, but then times 1/3. So once, and we were given the slant height. So again, this time I needed to do Pythagorean theorem again. If I didn't know my triples, this is actually a triple of 5, 12, 13. However, if you didn't realize that, then what you would do here to get the height is Pythagorean theorem. 5 squared plus h squared equals 13 squared. 25, 169, subtract 25, h squared equals 144, square root it, and the height is 12. So it really will pay off if you know your triples. If you want to write down some of these common ones that you've been seeing throughout the homework and the reviews, so you have a quick reference, you can do that. Or always remember, just do Pythagorean theorem. Then for number 11, once the volume of the pyramid, just like the cone, it's 1/3 area of the base times how tall it is. But my base this time is a rectangle. So I would do the area of the base, which is 5 times 4, times it by the height, and then I like to just divide it by 3. Because again, if you multiply it by 1/3, that equivalent is 0.3 repeating. So it's a lot easier if you just do 5 times 4 times 6, multiply all that, and then divide the answer by 3. Then number 11, here's a complex figure. So the top piece here is half of a cylinder. And then you're going to find the volume of the cube. And remember, the shortcut when it's a cube is just side to the 3rd power. So just remember that volume of a cube is you just take all the same side, which is going to be the same. See how it's all 4s? And you just do 4 to the 3rd power. And then now what we would do is add them together. If it said to leave it in terms of pi, this would be our answer. However, notice the question said to round your answer to the nearest 10th place. So we would actually multiply 8 times pi, get that answer, and then add it to 64. And that ends up giving us 89.1 inches cubed. Was that it? Anybody need me to go back to anything? Any questions on any questions from the review? All right, so key thing to do is to have your notes readily available. I definitely would draw pictures. Again, just like we see. Yes.